All right, so we have another Millionaire Club health check. I'm going to walk through this, guys. This is a very good situation, and I want to make it better. So this is a 29-year-old single individual that's making anywhere from 50,000 to 100,000. Based on the income projection I have is about 96,000, and they have 0 children. They're single. They're 29, like I said. On a scale of 1 to 10, they are about a 5 on confidence of overall financial picture. And from looking at this, I think they're on the right path, but I think there's so many opportunities right in front of them. And I'm going to walk through all those opportunities here shortly. On a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling about your mindset around money as well? Is only a 5. We want to get both of those to a 10. After this video, I'm very confident that you'll get to a 10 if you process and apply everything that we do. The cash they have on hand is $4,644. They are using Charles Schwab, aka TD Ameritrade. They came together, they merged. Currently have $67,000 in retirement assets that break out as you can see right here. I do have a question because right here specifically, as you'll see on the balance sheet, says it's a 401k, but here it says it's a traditional IRA, but we'll talk about that in a second. Cash in non-retirement assets, $31,000. We have non-retirement asset broken out here of the $31,000. We have cash available for investing on a monthly basis is showing 543. We'll talk about that here shortly. And then the allocations towards investments of that 543 is only going to the Roth 401k as of now. We'll build that process out with you. And then the current non-mortgage debt is 85,000. That consists of a truck loan, 0%, a student loan of 5.74%, and a credit card debt is $2,400, 0% because I pay my full credit card bill every month. And we'll talk about that as well. And then types of insurances, we look like we have medical, critical illness, dental, vision, short-term disability, basic life insurance, voluntary term life insurance, and then basic AD&D, and that's all through a paycheck because I got the paycheck stub. And we'll talk about that. We don't have a tax planner, we don't have a financial advisor, and we don't have any trust or will or any directives in our situation. So that is the situation we're in. Now, I'm going to show you the actual finances behind this. So we have, again, the whole setup as usual. We have a balance sheet, we have a budget, and we have an amortization schedule. So we're going to work our way through each one of these statements as we learn more about the situation. And so that was the summarized version. You can see the no-name man, as I listed here, because this is all confidential, has their breakout of their cash here. You know, they showed 4644 on the situational document PDF, but you can see like where it's at. So it's like the checking, the savings, et cetera. And I think it's going to be good to show you like the personal side of things, while also keeping this very, very, confidential, right? Okay. So what would I do in this situation? Number one is kudos to you for committing to Millionaire Club. I think it's really cool because what I've noticed is like right here, for example, it tells me you've actually walked through the process and you know it pretty well. And you know, you've actually walked through exactly how I've taught this. And so we've listed out our goals. We've listed out the money needed in total. We've listed out the account. We list out the dollars monthly. We know the exact amount of cash flow. This cash flow right here actually does tie back, which I typically don't see, to this $3,009 right here, this free cash flow on the budget summary tab, which we'll get to here shortly. But all in all, the fact I see these numbers tying out, I see the process being followed, this tells me you're really close to taking off in a major way. And we'll walk through exactly what that looks like here shortly. I also have noticed just little details, as the teacher, I kind of notice these details, but you've actually linked your locations of these various different accounts so that when you update this on a quarterly basis, like it's going to be there, super easy to find. You don't have to go search around the internet for all your passwords. You can just click this link, directly pull it up. Your password, your username are saved. So kudos to you. I noticed you've done the work. You've put in the work. And that's a big step in the first, part of this. A lot of people want the quick answer. A lot of people don't want to put in the work, and they're not going to get results whether or not I have a detailed explanation of this. So step one is just literally kudos. I'm proud of you. This is a big step in the right direction. Number two is I know you mentioned that you pay off your credit card bill every month, but if you actually look at your cash balance, we're looking at $4,600, but we're looking at a credit card bill of $2,400. I would not keep this open at all. You can use the credit card, you can swipe, but I would make sure I'm paying this off on a weekly basis. I typically, what I do for my personal credit card is, I use my credit card. I'm not anti-credit card, but I just, every single Wednesday, it's automatically paid off. I set up an automatic contribution to pay this off. So this balance doesn't build because your cash versus your credit card is tight. And so what you don't want to happen is this to all of a sudden an emergency come in and you don't have the cash to handle this and your ability to pay this off becomes impossible. And so I don't want to run that risk going forward. We need to get rid of this. We need to pay this off weekly, and we also need to build our cash reserves, which I'll get to in a second. So I would pay off the credit card debt ASAP. I do say the crypto that you have. And the reason I say that is because we don't have a significant amount of crypto. We have Stellar Lumens, Dogecoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin. And none of that, even if that 10x, it's not going to make much of a difference in your financial life. And what it will make a difference in your financial life is paying off your credit card debt. I'm not anti-Bitcoin. I have Bitcoin. I have a lot of it. But in this situation, it's just not significant enough to do anything. And what I like to do is clean house, and I like to pay off the credit card. I like to get in a good position so that if you want to invest in this in the future, you can. So my advice, especially with it being down, you could take advantage of some tax loss harvesting, lock in the loss a little bit here, and go on from there. So I think paying off the debt using some of the crypto would be good, the credit card debt specifically. My next step is I want to build the cash emergency fund. So I did some math for you. On your budget, you have a 38, 15, and 16 cent monthly cash expense. I will talk about below how I don't know if that's accurate, but what you've provided me is this is what it says, the 38.15. So what you need to get 3 months of expenses is, if you multiply it by 3, you'd need $11,000, almost $12,000. And if you wanted to multiply it by 6 or times the 3 months times 2, you get $22,000 to almost $23,000. And so I want to get anywhere from probably $11,500 all the way up to $23,000 in my emergency fund. Your level of risk, it's determined on where you want to go. More risky, go 6. Less risky situation, go 3. You're a single individual, so you have no dependents relying on you. You have no spouse. It's just you. If you're a healthy individual and you have a pretty good job and your rent's low, your expenses are low, I don't think you have a ton of risk, but everybody's situation is different. Everybody assesses this differently. So there's not a right or wrong, but that's kind of the general range I would take you in. I know me personally, I'd lean on the lower end on cash side because I don't want a lot of cash. I want to get my stuff invested. So if I did the math, it's going to take, based on your current cash ability, which is your sum of your cash and savings and checking, or just savings alone, because your checking's got to pay for your bills, but your savings alone, minus what you need, is $9,600 to get to 3 months. That will take you a total of 3 months to get there based on your cash flow. So your $3,000 that you have and some change, $3,009. I just took the total divided by that amount of cash flow per month. So I'm assuming the next couple months, that is the only thing I focus on. And all of the cash goes to your emergency fund so that you build this up. So if something comes during this time, an emergency, you can handle that. And then to 6 months would be $21,000 difference to get this 22. And then on top of that, you would need that. It would take basically, let's call it 7 months. In this calculation, I did add back the credit card debt because your balance to pay off that credit card debt will decrease this balance right here. So I did factor that in, but 3 to 7 months at the, for this process is nothing. So within 3 to 7 months, you'll have your credit card paid off and you'll have an emergency fund. I call it half a year max, maybe a quarter, half a year, and you'll be in a good prime position going forward. Okay. So that would be your cash emergency fund. My next step is my debt payment adjustment. So on your balance sheet, you do list specifically, you have your credit card, which we talked about. So there won't be a minimum payment for that because we're paying that off. But you do have a student loan and you do have a car loan right here. And so when I go over to your budget, I would expect to see something along the lines of a student loan payment and also something along the lines of a car payment. I do not see either one of those in this situation here. I see loan. And so I'm assuming loan could consolidate both of them. I don't know. It needs to be more specific because I should be able to see in an ideal scenario, a balance sheet has the actual debt listed. The budget has the specific loan expense minimum payment listed, and your amortization schedule has that whole entire debt payoff schedule listed. So when I look at this, I just see general loan. And then also when I go to your amortization schedule, I just see student loan amount in the personal loan calculation, but I do not see the car loan. And if I go and I do see the 810 here listed, so my guess is like if I'm just making sense of this, the 810 would be your student loan alone, but that means where's the car minimum payment? You know, even if it's 0%, which I believe on this you put a 0% truck loan, that does not mean it does not have a minimum payment. That does not mean you're not responsible for it, and does not mean you shouldn't be paying it off in general. It's still a car. It's still depreciating, okay? So I want to make sure we break out additionally, I would list this as student loan, and then I would also add any cash, car loan that you have responsible as well. So that's what I would adjust there. And the car loan, based on the debt, it's probably a pretty small cash amount, but we do need to adjust to that because this $3,000 that we have available in cash flow could change if we have a car debt also coming out of that, even though it's a 0% car loan, which would deter like this process and this timeline and things of that nature as we allocate that cash flow, the future true free cash flow in the future. Okay, so that would be that part. Adjust for that. Assess the true free cash flow as well, like I mentioned. So see the summary tab and the additional tab. So if I go over to your budget and I look at your summary tab, this is on the dot $6,100, and you have an extra variable income of $887, okay? But you also have a variable income of $3,300 in January. And then your fixed expenses are, in variable expenses are $4,000, but this one-time expense also shows in January. So you're kind of going off of this month alone, which is fine. $3,009 is what we have, but is this reality? So if you look at your summary tab, obviously I'm like, okay, $3,009 is awesome. It ties out exactly to what you're looking like cash flow. But does that continue in March? Does that continue in April and May and June and July? Just make sure it does, is what I'm trying to say. And then additional, if you look at the things that go into this specifically, the $887 for variable income, credit card cash back, Envoy reimbursement, and also bonus, none of those happened in January, so I wouldn't anticipate those to continue to happen. And if we went back to the summary tab and we took out the $887, we only have $2,100 available for free cash flow, which would change our goal timelines and everything. So we got to make sure we're aware of that. If I look down at your goal setting that you've mentioned, you're basically doing the 3,009, and also down here, your surplus or deficit is 3,009. So you're basing everything off of February. And I just want to make sure we have that amount of cash flow because we're going to be automating this whole process. So assess your true free cash flow for the situation. We also want to update the amortization tool with the vehicle. So like I mentioned, I do see the student loan, and I do see right here your projection is to pay this off in 5 years, which is in line with your goal here of $509 and pay off your student loan in 5 years specifically. And this is phenomenal, by the way, that you're able to like calculate this out. This is what I always tell people, just do the math. And so your $68,000 is going to be paid off with an extra $500, $509 that is, in exactly 60 months, as you have listed out right here, which is exactly what you should be doing. And it's also the exact minimum amount that you're paying plus your additional free cash flow, which you listed out specifically as part of that 3,000. Just again, let's assess the true free cash flow so that we have that $509. And then what we want to do is automate this once we know that for a fact. But great job there is across the board. So update the amortization tool with the vehicle. We don't have our car debt over there. I know it's 0%. It still has a minimum payment. It still has a $13,000 balance. We still should account for it on the budget, on the amortization schedule, and we've just left that off entirely. Unless like mom or dad are paying that or something like that. I don't know, but I would assume that you're paying this. Now, the next thing is consolidation of the HSA. So if I go over to your balance sheet and I'm assessing the situation over here, let's go into, I'm on the balance sheet, and I look at the HSA. I see HSA, CAT, Purdue, and Envoy. If those are old HSAs and it's under the same name, which I would assume it's under yours, you can just move it into one. And I think I would probably do that to make your life a lot easier. And then you can contribute to the one that you have going forward. I've actually my wife's had health equity in the past. And so I have some experience with that one. I don't know which one's currently being used, but I would consolidate all into one, or at least consideration of that consolidation. It makes it a lot easier. I think it's always good to consolidate things if you can. And same thing with like, if you have like the Roth 401k at Caterpillar and Envoy, you have an old one, 58,000, and also this one at 30,193. And so if they're both Roths, they both have Roth dollars 100% in them. There's no tax impact to make that move. So consideration there. Consideration of also rolling your IRA into your Roth IRA. And so what I want to do here is show you the power of education, financial education, and what this could cost you. So as of today, based on your income, I took your average income from January and February. I then assumed a tax rate to that based on where you're at, and I got roughly $96,000. So I probably, from a gross perspective, you're at $96,000 per year. And so if that's the case, if you're a single filer and you're making $96,000, you're in this 22% tax bracket. And so you have what shows here, at least, as a traditional 401k. But again, back to the situation here, it actually says a traditional IRA. So I don't know what it is. You'd have to tell me. Let's assume it's a traditional IRA. So what you could be at risk of in the future when your income increases substantially, you're in the $150,000 to $200,000 range as a single individual, modified adjusted gross income is what's called pro rata. And so if it is a traditional IRA and you do have traditional assets in an IRA and you make above the income limit, modified adjusted gross income limit, that is, and you want to do a Roth IRA at that point in time, you have to do a backdoor Roth IRA. That's just the rule that, I'm just teaching you the rule. And so if you want to do that, you can, and you can go to the backdoor Roth IRA, but what happens is it's going to account for your traditional IRAs that are sitting there. So if there is a traditional IRA with just a $3,600 balance, it might make sense to roll that over, take the tax hit now, because again, if you're bumping your $96,000 income to $99,000, your tax rate won't change. So you'd still be paying the same amount of tax on this money, but it would make a whole lot of sense to get that money out of the traditional, pay the taxes now, consider income, move it to the Roth IRA, and then going forward, you don't have risk for specifically the pro rata rule. Set you up. It's one of those things I'm seeing out 5 years in your future. So consideration of rolling your IRA into your Roth IRA. Again, it might be a Roth, it might truly be a traditional 401k, but your information is conflicting. And so that's a little confusing. Next thing is attention to your goals above. So you want to retire. You obviously walk through the process, exactly how I have this set up, which is awesome to see. You want to retire by 54. You want to pay off your student loans in 5 years. You want to take a European cruise in May, and you want to purchase Gmall's Honda work car by December. So let's take a step back and realize that these goals are awesome, but remember prioritization. I would prefer, I'm not saying you have to, this is what I would do. I'd prefer to pay off the credit card debt and stack the cash first before I start doing all these other goals. And that could delay your goals slightly here. The other thing to consider is this is exactly $3,009 a month, which aligned to February, which is totally fine. But is that going to be truthful going forward? And also, I didn't see the car loan like I said there. So is that true going forward? You also are purchasing a work car supposedly. So I don't know if that has something to do with this whole process. This says Honda. The other one I think said Toyota or truck. So I don't know. But things to consider there. Overall, looks really solid. I really like these goals, in fact. But you might want to have some short-term sacrifice. And maybe for the next 3 to 6 months, like I said, 3 to 7 months, let's bulk up the emergency fund so that we can go to this European cruise and we can enjoy this European cruise, or we can purchase grandma's Honda by backing this up just a few months to be able to start this whole entire process. And then I am very in line with everything you listed here. I like how the specificity came out. Like, I want to retire by 54. I want to pay off my student loans in 5 years. The more detailed you're going to get, especially with the amount needed, the type of account, and the monthly amount needed is critical. And you've done a great job of outlining that. But I would consider backing all of these goals up for just a couple months to make sure these other things are prioritized first. So great job there. The next thing is setting up your investment framework. So once you get through all these things and you're wanting to set up your investment framework, right now, if I go to your additional income and expense tab, you have 0 investments listed here. So that makes sense based on your retirement assets. You're investing $543 into a Roth 401k. So that's coming out of your paycheck before the take home hits, which is why it's not included, which is good. But this is not enough going forward to hit the goal that you want to hit of retiring by 54. So specifically, what I want to walk through is that. So as you know, the framework in which we operate, I'm going to walk through a very simplified process. And I think it might be easier to actually calculate this out based on the framework. So I'm going to do up to the match of your 401k number first. So I'm going to do up to match. Let's do up to 401k match is step number one. Okay. I'm going to do let's do max out IRA second, maybe Roth potentially, maybe Roth. In your situation, I would do a Roth based on your income and where you're at tax-wise, 22% tax bracket. The third thing as I would do is remaining 15% to 401k. My fourth would be HSA. This would say has in a second. I don't know why it always does that. And then my next, let me zoom in a little bit on this. My next thing would be a taxable brokerage account. And I skipped at number 2 typically, which is if you do have a ESPP at work, it could be consideration at number 2 here. And so in your situation, if you're making, let's call it 96,000 is my rough estimate. You do replace that with yours. Take that times 0.15 and you're at 14,000. So I don't know your match, but let's say it's, 3%, or let's say 3% of 96. So this times 0.03, 2880. Your IRA is going to be 7,000, whether you do Roth or traditional. I would do Roth personally in this situation. And then remaining would be 15% minus step 1 and step 2. I'll subtract that out, and we have these laid out right here. And so if I sum up this, it's going to be the 14.4. And then how do I, figure out where this is going to go? Is number 1 is this plus this, step 1 and 3 would be my 401k contribution, and my IRA would obviously be the remaining, which is 7,000. And that's how I would set myself up. And so the $7,400 would be the 7,400 divided by your income, whatever that is your percentage you actually set up, probably about 8% round up. And then 7,000 would just be obviously divided up by 26 pay periods, and you would set up an automatic contribution in your IRA of $269.23. And so those would be your IRA and 401k for retirement sake. What you'd want to do after that specifically, does this amount of cash flow with where you're at get you to your goals? And so I'm going to pull up an actual document to show you where this actually takes you based on this general framework. Okay, so what I'm going to first do is figure out the total monthly amount. So 14.4 divided by 12 months is $1,200 a month. That is what I'm investing towards retirement. The second thing I want to do is figure out where you're at in retirement so far. So 67,000. So I'm going to literally copy 67,642. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do my initial investment is 67,642. I'm investing $1,200 currently based on my framework. I'm going to assume an 8% return to be conservative in this situation. I'm going to zoom in on this for you guys so you can see it a little better. And then I'm going to figure out my age, which is 29. So if I go over here, I want to retire. 54 minus 29 is 25 years. Does 25 years give me what I need? You're right on the money. You're right on the money. So at least based on what you mentioned. So you said that you need 1.5 million to retire by 54. You actually will have about 1.7 million. And you also mentioned here it's going to take $1,700 monthly. I'm not sure if you considered these other things below, maybe starting first, but it doesn't seem like it because you're putting this as part of the total amount. So it sounds like you're starting now. So you actually overshoot it by $200,000 and some change. So based on what I'm seeing, if you do $1,200 based on the $1,400 that we calculated, or $14,400 we calculated, $1,200 a month, you will get there to your goal. Do you want to be more conservative? Obviously, that's a decision you have to make. But based on this, you will get to your goals. This is a cool investment setup. If you're able to save more money, like basically what you're telling me is you're currently saving $1,700, or the goal is to save $1,700. And if that's the case, you actually have $500 more to apply elsewhere, which is $6,000 per year. So if that's the case, what you could add to the picture are two things, the HSA or the brokerage account. The HSA as a single individual is not as much as you would think. It's $4,300 a year. And if your company does contribute to this HSA, then that would be taken off the top as an allowable contribution. Many companies would put $500 in for you, or maybe even $1,000. So take into consideration what that is. Let's say $500. That's $3,800 of the $6,000. The remaining could go to the brokerage as an example. You'd be maxing out an HSA, you'd be maxing out an IRA, you'd be putting plenty to your 401k, and you'd be doing a taxable brokerage on an annual basis. This would be a really good setup. I'll add this to the mix over here, HSA, turns to has, taxable brokerage, and you could be doing $2,200 per year, and then, whatever the 40, let's just call it 4,300 minus your employer contribution, and these would be your amounts. If you want to divide this by 26 pay periods like I have here, you can also figure out what you're doing on a monthly basis. I could even go upward. Instead of 8% on my 401k, I'm doing 284. You look at the sum total, that's 784. Boom, 784 per month, times that by 12. You're contributing a good chunk, or actually this is 26 pay periods, I apologize. So we'd actually want to take this and figure out this is divided by 26. So we have a lot more we're contributing on an annual basis, which is really $20,400. So it's times 26. 14,000 plus 6,000 equals, of course, 20,400 just for your check and balance there. And that would be your basically investment framework in a nutshell. Very simplified, but it does take into consideration what you've mentioned so far, which is up here. And it also allows you to pay off your student debt in 5 years, also while retiring by 54, also by doing everything else. So this is pretty good. Setting up your investment framework is key. The next thing is you are young, you're 29, you're single, and you're not in a position where you really probably need a true tax professional on a planning perspective or a state attorney quite yet. But when I do see, this answer, no, I'm okay with this now, but I think very shortly and very soon you'll need this. The financial advisor, I don't think you ever need. And then the estate plan, I think you're going to need very shortly as well. Likely when you add maybe a spouse to the picture, maybe kids down the road, if that's the plan, I don't know. But things to consider there. And then lastly is your insurance coverages. We want to make sure we're adding probably long-term disability is my guess here. Potentially making sure the term life insurance is outside of your employer. Your life insurance is only $89,000. That's just not enough probably. You don't need a whole lot when you're an individual, but make sure like bills for like, I hate to say this, but morbid, it's, funeral costs are covered. And so I would probably get this outside of your employer. It just depends where you're at, how you kind of assess things. And if you do want any of your assets to be directed to somebody or a basic will to some family versus letting the state handle it in probate, it would make sense to probably get a will on top of that. So it just depends, like kind of where you're at, what you kind of value. But long-term disability, term life insurance, probably, I know you don't have dependents yet, but just enough to cover you. And then on top of that, you also could lock in a policy, 20, 30 years right now, which would be a huge benefit at 29 because the premium below 30 is actually way less expensive than what if you opened at 35 when you had children or if you had a spouse. So if you plan on having dependents, wouldn't it be the worst thing in the world to lock in a 20, 30-year policy now? And the overall cost is going to be a lot less. But it depends what your life looks like and what you're trying to plan on here. So things like that, ID theft protection could be good. Umbrella insurance, like I said, could be good, and things of that nature for insurances that you don't have listed here. So all in all, this situation is really good. There are definitely some things I would be adjusting. And if we did this, we could retire by 54 on a single income, making about $96,000 per year, and you're 29 years old. Like you're debt free, you're cash, you've enough cash, you're liquid enough, and you're doing everything you want to do. And so this is pretty encouraging to see. And especially the way you laid it out, you're very close to taking that next step. And I'm looking forward to it. So appreciate everything, sharing this, guys. And I will be doing this from time to time. Tune in for another Millionaire Club episode in the future.